Good morning. It's 9 o'clock and time for the Tuesday, July 5th meeting of the Board of County Commissioners of Indian River County. We're going to begin with an invocation by Mr. Freddie Wolfert, and that'll be followed by the pledge led by Commissioner Davis. Please rise.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning, Freddie.
Good to be here. Bow your heads with me for a word of prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, we come before your throne of grace with bowed heads and humble hearts, asking for your divine directions. Control our minds, body, and soul, so that we may commit ourselves as a living sacrifice before you. We ask that our commissioners who you have put before us continue to have open minds and great hearts of joy to bring forth solutions to dilemmas and problems that may arise. We ask also, Heavenly Father, for the administrators who also support the commissioners to be open-minded in their doings. Heavenly Father, we live in a beautiful country. Continue to help us to protect the freedom that we have. Continue to help us to realize that the silent giant must come alive now. No more should the minority take control of our country. But keep us, God, vigilant. Keep us always mindful that you are in control. And if you do this, we'll be so ever mindful to give you the praise, the glory, and the honor. In the mighty name of Jesus we pray. Amen.
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 I
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wolfert.
Yeah.
Gentlemen, are there any additions or deletions to the agenda?
Move approval. Second.
We got a motion from Commissioner Fletcher, seconded by Commissioner Davis. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Passes 5-0. Next, we have the presentation of a proclamation honoring Relia Dawson as Youth of the Year winner for Indian River County, the state of Florida, and the Southeast region of the United States. This will be presented to Ms. Dawson by Commissioner Wesley Davis.
It's my pleasure and my honor. Relia, if you'd like to please come on up, and I see some
Bring your
special
people
people
up.
behind you there. Come on up.
Don't be shy now.
Absolutely. This is a wonderful. This is absolutely wonderful. Good morning. This is a proclamation honoring Relia Dawson as Youth of the Year winner for Indian River County, the state of Florida, and the southeastern region of the United States. Whereas Relia Dawson has been a member of the Vero Beach Boys and Girls Club since 2014 and is 2016 and is a graduate of Vero Beach High School. Whereas Relia Dawson will travel to Washington, D.C. in September to compete for the 2016 National Youth of the Year title. And whereas each year one exceptional young person from a Boys and Girls Club is selected to be National Youth of the Year, serving as both an exemplary ambassador for the Boys and Girls Club, youth, and a strong voice for all of our nation's young people. And whereas the Youth of the Year program, established in 1947 by Boys and Girls Clubs of America, is a premier recognition program for club members, promoting service to club, community, and family, academic success, strong moral character, life goals, and poise and public speaking ability, and celebrating extraordinary achievement of club members. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed by the Board of County Commissioners of Indian River County that the Board recognizes and applauds Relia Dawson's accomplishments on behalf of the county, and the Board extends a heartfelt wishes for success at the national competition and her future endeavors. Adopted this 5th day of July, 2016, signed by all 5 county commissioners. Relia, please say a few words.
Good morning.
Good morning.
First of all, I'd like to thank God for this honor to stand before each and every one of you. And I'd like to thank all of you for taking the time out to come this morning and honor me. It's a pleasure to live in Indian River County. And I remember when I went to the state of Florida competition and they asked me where I was from, they were like, where's Indian River County? And we were all from the state of Florida. So it's a pleasure to be from Indian River County and allow others to see that great people too can come from Indian River County.
Where was the state competition?
Tampa.
Where's Tampa? How's that? That's great. This an extreme honor, and of course you've got some good people behind you and beside you in this process that we're certainly proud of to have a part of this community. And we wish you all the best up there, and we know you're going to represent us well.
Thank you.
Relia, may I ask, what are the type of things that put you on this path to get this award? The type of things that you had to exhibit at the Florida State Contest?
At the Florida State Contest, you have to do volunteer hours and community service, and you also had to win at the local level at your Boys and Girls Club.
Thank you,
Yeah.
and congratulations.
Thank you.
Really, thank you so much for being our hope to be on the map. You have a strong commitment in your voice, your delivery. We're very proud of you, and you make that whole building justified and with good reason, and you give us the strength. You give us the strength to go forward because we know that you're our future. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, good morning and congratulations. I think maybe we should send her, when you go to travel, with some Indian River County Chamber of Commerce packets, so when people say, now where is Indian River County from, you'll have something right there to give to them. So we'll get you a few of those before you go.
Thank you.
Great, thank you.
He's part GYEC too.
Yes.
Thank you, Fred.
That's right.
Thank you so much. I think they're gonna know where Indian River is when they meet Relia.
Congratulations. Absolutely.
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 Come on back for a picture in the middle. She's
Come right up front here.
perfect. All right. Super. Good job, guys. Good morning. Thank you.
Thank you.
We now have the approval of the minutes of the regular meeting of May 17th.
Move approval.
second.
We have a motion from Commissioner Flesher, seconded by Commissioner Zork. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Passes 5-0. Motion for the regular meeting of May 24th.
Move approval.
Motion from Commissioner Flesher. Second from Commissioner O'Brien.
Tough crowd.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Passes 5-0. Anybody want to comment on the information items? If not, we'll move to the consent agenda. Anybody want to pull something from the consent agenda?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I and M.
I and M. Anybody else?
Jay, Mr. Chairman.
J. Is there anybody from the audience who'd like to pull anything from the consent agenda?
Move approval, Mr.
We
Chairman.
have a motion from Commissioner Flesher,
Second.
second from Commissioner O'Brien. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
Aye,
Passes
Chair.
5-0. Item I, Commissioner Zork.
Yes, hi, thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is more of a question for Rich. As we recently finished the MPO exercise looking at the 2025 plans where the 53rd Street is now in a, not a near term, but in a, where they start tracking that particular road from 58th to 66th. Do we need to modify anything in the agreement that might change the bridge design at 53rd Street as a portion of this?
Rich Sperry, Public Works Director. At this time, the answer to that is no.
Okay.
We have accommodated for that road to be improved in the future, so that the bridge that goes in will accommodate that, based on our new 20-year outlook for roadways.
Okay. All right, well, great.
I got
That's
a
all.
question
Oh,
on
yes.
this, while you have it there. Was approached at the parade yesterday. I see that they're starting to relocate some telephone poles along 66th Avenue. It really doesn't look like they're relocating those far enough to the west.
Correct, I noticed that.
And that was asked of me, are we now changing the design to move the road closer to the east, or not as many lanes, or or is it just a figment of my imagination?
Well, we've already looked into that with FPL. FPL provided a permit, which had the wrong right-of-way width. That's on their part. We have been in contact. We sent them the right-of-way maps. So they'll be relocating the poles that they've been relocating.
They'll relocate,
Yeah, they're
Okay.
relocating the relocation.
as long as it's out of their pocket, not ours.
That's correct. No,
Okay.
it's not. It was their mistake.
All right,
And
well-
we've
Okay.
caught it, and we're working with it.
I was hoping it wasn't my depth perception leaving me or something. So, okay, thanks, Rich.
If there's nothing else, Chair, I'll entertain a motion.
Move to
for-
approve.
Second.
Motion from Commissioner Davis, seconded by Commissioner Fleischer. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Commissioner Zork, item M.
Yes, under M, is Bill here today, Dylan? He's not, okay. This has been a discussion, well, there's two parts. One, I see we do have a high bidder amount on this that seemed to be lower than what we had hoped to get based on some prior conversations, but this is the number that came in. The question I had with Bill was where the sale of the footprint that the tower sits on includes the aerial rights for the guide wires coming from the tower back down to the ground, but we don't address the attachment point from the ground to the aerial rights, and it seems to be, I don't know how we get that neatened up, but if you have aerial rights but they don't have the permission to connect to the ground, you know, whether it's a 5 foot by 5 foot square where they attach to the ground needs to go with the transfer, so they always have a place to connect the guide wires to the ground. With not addressing it, it seems that we need to have some provision just so that the purchaser is covered, that they always have the rights to attach the support wires to the ground. I know aerial goes from the ground up, but to have something to keep it in place, I think would be just neatening up the paperwork.
If the board would like, if the board just wants to hold off on this, I've been trying to contact Bill about getting some additional information about
Okay.
the item.
And if the seller would like to move forward because they need to start with permits or something, I'm fine with that, and just let them know we want to address this part to protect their investment that they're making. So if they need to close it at an earlier date that doesn't accommodate gathering this additional information, I'm fine with that. It's just a additional measure to make sure everything's in good order.
Yeah, I mean, certainly we could have the board approve the item subject to getting those issues resolved.
That would be fine.
Is that your motion?
Yes, motion to
Second.
approve?
Well,
We-
there's
we need
three
to-
options, yeah.
Oh,
We need to pick one of the options.
Oh, correct.
but they're all going to include that amendment?
Yes.
Yes, okay.
All right.
So Commissioner Davis, you made the motion. Do you want to pick option one, which is the greatest amount?
Yeah, I think that would be appropriate.
Okay, good. We have an option from, motion from Commissioner Davis picking option one with subject to the establishing the footprint for the guide wires.
Right.
Is that seconded by Commissioner Zork?
Yes, it is.
And any other questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 5-0. Thank you. Commissioner O'Brien, item J.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a HUD contract for renewals of some of the homeless programs we have, and we had a presentation several weeks ago by Mrs. Meal, and in the backup, it didn't have all the contract requirements and documents. So the only question I had is just to make sure that we're not getting into any strings attached or conditions to this contract that we might find unfavorable from HUD. And Brad, I don't know if you can speak to that, or?
This is Brad Bernauer, Director of Human Services. This is basically the standard letter that HUD puts out. It's exactly the same as last year's. What they're saying basically is that they need the county to commit to the accounting procedures and whatnot that HUD requires when they come in and do the audits.
Okay, so these are under some other existing contracts we have that
Correct.
don't
They're
have any
renewals.
overly onerous conditions or strings attached?
Right,
Okay.
they're renewals of existing contracts. I will say that some of the renewals, to Louise's credit exclusively, Indian River County is getting more funding this year than they did the previous year. And it's kind of a strange situation because most all of the counties in the state of Florida are getting much less. They were all cut in their funding. We increased
Okay,
funding.
very good. With that, Mr. Chairman, move approval of item J.
We have a motion from Commissioner O'Brien, second by Commissioner Zork. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 5-0. Thank you very much, gentlemen. We will now move to item 9, constitutional officers. Indian River County Sheriff Darrell Law. Good morning, Mr. Sheriff.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion to approve from Commissioner Fletcher, seconded by Commissioner Davis. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Passes 5-0. Thank you very much.
Good morning, Chairman. I just want to say thank you for that, albeit only $24,000, but it certainly takes away from us not having to negotiate any further. And also, I'd like to recognize Ms. Annette Russell in the back. Wave your hand, Annette. She's recently taken over the grants position, is doing a fantastic job, and we look forward to bringing more of these similar type situations to you. Thank you, and have a great day.
Thank you, Sheriff.
Sheriff, one question, if I might. I wanted to congratulate you on some of the interns you have working out at the sheriff's office this summer, especially Patricia doing these sign language classes for a number of your staff. She does a great job, and I'm sure she's walking on cloud 9, getting to share her knowledge that she knows on the sign language.
Part of her internship at UCF, so it's fantastic.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We move on to item 10, public items, public hearing, festival ordinance. And I'll turn this over to County Attorney Dylan Reingold.
Thank you very much. In March, this board approved an agreement for the Rocktoberfest concert to be held at the fairgrounds. At the time, the proposed hours in the contract disagreed with or conflicted with the festival ordinance that we had in place. The board at that time voted to approve the agreement with the understanding that the hours would essentially either be waived and also directed the county attorney to come back with some proposals. The county attorney's office has worked diligently with the Parks Division. I want to thank the Parks Division for their help on this in preparing the attached ordinance, which addresses the issue and resolves several issues that we identified relating to festival-like events. The first was to actually repeal the festival ordinance from Chapter 205. Currently, the festival ordinance addresses all festivals, whether on private property or on public property within unincorporated Indian River County. I didn't feel like it was appropriate for the Parks Division or the Recreation Division to essentially be monitoring or regulating festivals that were on private property, and we all felt that it was more appropriate for the Community Development Department to be regulating events on private property. And thus, the Community Development Department will be bringing back to this board another ordinance through the LDR process that will address festivals on private property through the temporary use permitting process for these types of events. The second key to the chain is that we established a threshold for large-scale events that would be authorized by the board. And working with recreation staff, we came up with sort of a three-prong analysis. One was that there was alcohol being sold at the event. Two, that there were more than 100 primitive tent or campsites. And three, there were 2 or more days of outside concerts. And those types of events would require the approval or authorization of the board. With such events, there would be several conditions that would need to be satisfied, which are actually similar to those already set forth within the festival ordinance now. And finally, the hours of operation restrictions would be eliminated for these types of events. I have one small change to the ordinance that I would like to propose today. It just clarifies the issue that this addresses the Indian River County Fairgrounds. So thus, the proposed language that I present today to the board is under 20509 subsection 2A. Any permit for the sale and consumption of alcoholic beverages, and this is the new language now, at the Indian River County Fairgrounds, and then continuing on with more than 100 primitive tent campsites and entertainment, which consists primarily of amplified musical renditions conducted in open spaces not within an enclosed structure, over 2 or more days will require authorization from the board. And then an additional new language would be such authorization shall only be given for the Indian River County Fairgrounds. Thus, these types of festival type ordinances will be for the fairgrounds and not for the South County intergenerational facility. There was just an issue in terms of the drafting as whether these types of festival events would be occurring at the fairgrounds and the intergenerational facility. And it was just intended in my conversations with the Parks Division that they be for this fairgrounds, and that's the clarification language. Thus, with that, simply recommend that the board open up for public hearing, for public comment, take any input, close the public hearing after the comment, and then vote to adopt the ordinance either as originally drafted or as proposed amended today. And with that, I turn it back over to the chair.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Mr. Reingold?
I have one. What is the uniqueness of calling them primitive campsites? Because I've seen some of these camps, they look like condos. They have multiple rooms. They don't look primitive at all.
Yeah, the difference is really, you're not going to have an RV hookup in a car. This is like a tent on the ground.
camping.
Yeah.
Well, and it can be, even if it's an RV, it's not hooked up to water, sewer.
Okay.
Think of what you would rent at Long Point, for example.
Right,
Run
okay.
your air conditioner, that kind of stuff. That's non-primitive.
Okay.
Any other questions for Mr. Reingold? This is a public hearing, so I'll open the public hearing and ask if there's anybody here who'd like to speak on this matter. Anyone here who'd like to speak on this matter on festivals? There being none, we will close the public hearing. Gentlemen?
Move to approve the ordinance as amended by the county attorney.
We have a motion to approve as amended by the county attorney from Mr. O'Brien.
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Flesher. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 5-0. Thank you very much, Mr. Reingold.
Thank you very much for your consideration.
Thank you.
On to public discussion items. The first is a request to speak from Wanda Scott. Ms. Scott is not in the audience right now, so we will,
Let's go on to the next one whenever she comes in.
okay. Well, next one is a request to speak from Nancy Offit. Ms. Offit, if you'd like to come up to the podium, give us your name and address, please.
Good morning, Commissioners, Chairman Solari, and welcome, Jason. Congratulations. My name is Nancy Offit. I reside in Deer Beach at 686 Date Palm Road, and I'm here representing the Laura Riding Jackson Foundation. I am on the board of directors. I am here by myself, but if necessary, I can bring a posse of prolific poets to convince you to hopefully designate a poet laureate for Indian River County. In your backup, I believe we've provided you with our request and some information on Laura Riding Jackson Foundation. It was started in 1992 for several purposes, which I think you would like to know. One was Laura Riding Jackson, though she's still a bit obscure in Indian River County, and we hope to change that, was very well known internationally. She was born in New York City, excuse me, educated at Cornell, and then went overseas and did a lot of writing and poetry, and she's very well regarded and has, we'll call it a fan club or a foundation in Great Britain. She moved to Vero Beach, actually to Wabasso, in 1946, where she resided until the end of her life in 1991. She died when she was 90 years old. And the Laura Riding Jackson Foundation moved her home from where it was located, almost at the intersection of 510 and what is now US 1, near the St. Vincent de Paul thrift store. We moved it to the campus of the Environmental Learning Center, because it has significance as her home, being an honored poet, but also because it was a cracker-style home designed to fit into Florida's climate. It did not have any electricity until nurses decided, who were taking care of Laura in her last years, demanded to have some electricity to facilitate their care. But we've maintained the home for public use, and so for the essence of its architecture, green building, and we find that to be very worthy of continuing its support. And lastly, we wanted to get our arms around Laura's work. She liked to mentor young people, and she was very good at what she did, obviously. And so therefore, a foundation was created to continue her work and to inspire young people through teen workshops, poetry workshops, and then we have the barbecue, an annual barbecue that I hope, if you haven't already been, you'll come to the next one. But we attract poets, renowned poets from throughout the United States. And our audience at that includes a lot of people from out of town, so we have more tourist dollars coming in. So with that said, I wanted to give credibility to the foundation and to poetry in general. We would like the Board of County Commissioners to designate an honorary position of Poet Laureate for Indian River County. There is, the Poet Laureate started, and there's a national one, which is an advisor to this and that. Then Florida had a Poet Laureate for 35 years. He died, with his poetry in his hand, or whatever, I don't know. But, so the Florida legislature created a more reasonable tenure for that. And they have a 4-year term where the Poet Laureate now is from St. Petersburg. He's a gentleman there. We have someone we'd eventually like to nominate for the state Poet Laureate. But the idea of having it on our local level, we just said that Indian River County is not known in Tampa. Well, we want them to know where we are. We want to have a Poet Laureate before they do. And that being said, I think you have most of the information. It would be an honorary position, no compensation, renewable. The Laura Riding Jackson Foundation proposes to submit nominations. We do have one person in mind, frankly, that would be the inaugural laureate. And then thereafter, we would entertain, closer to the 4-year timeline there, that we would invite anyone who would like to submit an application, a juried work, and there would be an Indian River County resident. I think those details are in your information. So unless you have any other questions.
Mr. Chairman. Commissioner O'Brien, then Commissioner Davis.
Thank you. Nancy, thank you very much for this. I think it's a wonderful idea. Normally, we don't do any formal action on items brought to us, so I'd be glad to bring this back next week under my matters, and it'll be on the agenda as an official action item, and then we can take a vote on it then. So I'll be glad to bring it forward.
Commissioner Davis.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Nancy brought this to my attention back, a month ago or so. And I don't know how it happened, but I guess this is probably something for Dylan. I mean, it seemed like something as simple as naming a Poet Laureate. It sounded like we had to almost go through the community development department and get Public Works to sign off on it, it sounded like. Without overanalyzing this whole thing, is there something that we can do?
Yeah, when I looked at this item, I recalled back in April I'd received some information about this. I researched, and there was actually 2 counties, one Nassau and one Volusia County that I could find. Nassau County has a Poet Laureate. They have a Nassau County Writers and Poets Society that annually nominates a person to the board, and then the board kind of appoints them. Volusia County in August last year appointed 2 Poets Laureate. They had actually taken their nominees through a specific selection committee that then proposed both those folks to the board. If the board was to consider this, the only thing I would think of having, and it was actually something that the speaker mentioned, was just some sort of vetting committee or selection committee or nominating committee that would bring folks back to this board, and then this board would then vote on those. So however this board wants to create a committee or defer to another committee that already exists, it just seems like our sister counties utilize some sort of vetting process.
And Commissioner, what I'll do for no response, I will send you all the dialogue that Misty put together on this. So however, it may be appropriate for it to come back through legal.
Well, I don't want to create another committee. I think the Laura Riding Jackson Foundation will serve that purpose.
And the last thing we want to do is get in the middle of a fight y'all may have about y'all's Poet Laureate one day.
Yeah,
So just
exactly.
bring
So
forth
I
one.
think, Dylan, we'll just ask you to, well, next week I'll just ask for, we'll get a vote and direct you to draft up a resolution or whatever we need to make it happen as
And I would
simple
like-
as we can.
I would like for it to not be, as it comes forward, your foundation, y'all come up with a name, and we either approve it or deny it. I mean, that's about as much involvement as far as choosing our Poet Laureate. And that's assuming I'm saying it right, so.
I just want to ask my fellow commissioners, I mean, it seems to me that at least we have to make an attempt to see if anybody else is interested. I mean, most probably they wouldn't be, but I'd hate for us to get in the situation where we designated one body to be
sole sources.
Be sole source, and then find out that there are others in the background. Okay. So I have no problem, with under your matters coming to this decision next week, but I think we need to shape it so that people are aware of it a little bit, and if they want to speak up.
With all due respects, Mr. Solari, we feel that Laura Riding Jackson has demonstrated that it's the voice of poetry and literary works, and people do come to us to perfect their skills and that sort of thing, but we would broadcast and advertise that there would be applications for anyone. They don't have to be part of our organization. They can be anyone who lives in Indian River County. And I just feel that we are the best organization to bring this forward. I think I mentioned to you, my poetry is roses are red, violets are blue. I mean, that's as good as I, and I just would really not want people who feel that they've got that similar talent to come, and they should be, the vetting committee said it should be someone who's published, recognized, lives in Indian River County, and would represent the county to its best advantage. We do have a name. In fact, that's what happened. I think I put the cart before the horse by bringing the name and asking that this individual be designated as the poet laureate, to which the county attorney properly said, well, we haven't designated what a poet laureate is, so that's what we're doing first. And then our hope is to give you the name of the inaugural laureate and then go through the vetting process in the next cycle.
That's fine, but I still believe that any other organization in the county that is poetry inclined ought to at least have the opportunity of coming before us if they hear about this.
And Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Probably the thing to do is to reach out to the Cultural Council.
Well, that's a natural one that you'd think of.
Yeah.
And yeah, that was one I believe I mentioned to Mrs. Offutt before. So we're not saying that you're not the best organization, but just as the normal way we go about things, it's good to let all the public know what we're doing, and if there's another group out there, at least allow them to come before us and say what they want to say.
That's fine.
I mean,
I hate to really create a situation, but I understand your reasoning, so that's fine. So where we have asked in the resolution for Laura Riding Jackson to designate, is that not what you want to do? Or you just want
we
to see
don't
if
know
anyone
until we have a
objects?
public discussion and allow anybody else who wants to speak to
Okay,
speak. It
fine.
may well be that in the end, that we designate the Laura Riding Jackson Foundation to do that. But we still, at least I believe, that we ought to allow other people to at least have the option of coming before us and explaining why they might be better than you.
Okay, I'd like to hear that too.
Well, nobody's, I'm not suggesting there is someone better.
No, I know, I
But we
understand.
hate to close the options out before having at least a conversation about it.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Chairman.
our next meeting is July 12th, and then we don't meet again until August 16th. Would you prefer I bring this back on August 16th, so there's more time to get the word out, or do you think
But I'll
next
see how
week?
the others feel. I mean, I'm-
Let me, Mr. Chairman?
yes.
Nancy, is there any, do you have a preference as far as the 12th of July or August? Is there something that you would like to move along faster in this situation for a time?
Well, it's been going on. I want it to pass, obviously, so whatever we need, if we need time to bring in others, I don't know how you would advertise or ask them to come to the table, but I would like to proceed as quickly as possible.
I'd like to see it then at the next meeting in July.
Nancy, if you recall in our conversation, a separate conversation, I did bring up the Cultural Council as well. And I believe that that would probably be very beneficial
Okay,
to your cause.
yeah,
And you might,
yeah, I just don't want, the Cultural Council is wonderful. In fact, in another life, I was the director of the Indian River Arts Council, which evolved into the Cultural Council. I just don't want it to appear that it's an umbrella organization that we have to, answer to.
Sure.
I don't think anybody up here is suggesting anything of the kind.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank
no,
you.
a great idea. very
Mr. Chairman, I'll bring it
supportive,
back for the July
and I
12th
hope
meeting under
that,
my matters.
That's great.
You
So
get a chance to deliver poetic justice.
It'll be-
Very good,
It'll
thank
be on the
you.
agenda for the July 12th meeting, Ms.
Thank
Abbott.
you very much. And I'll reach out to the Cultural Council.
Super. Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
Bye-bye.
We'll go back to public discussion from Wanda Scott. Good morning, name and address for the record. And Ms. Scott, if you try to stay a little bit focused today, if you would, please.
Good morning.
Thank you.
I didn't bring any T-shirts today, so That's usually a distractor, but, and no, I won't bring out the videos or pictures today. Good morning, good morning, good morning. I'm Wanda Scott, 4306 26th Avenue. Can you hear me? It just seems sort of like it's slow. I just have a few things today. Can you believe it? Just a few things. I think about 4 things, and then I'm going to sit down. One thing I do want to say just to start off is the area in Gifford, 45th Street. You get, I guess we say in the military, kudos on that, or attaboys. The road turned out to be beautiful and nothing but compliments on the pavement. You know, of course, I beat you guys up about the trees, but the pavement, the lines and everything, just gorgeous and better than we've ever had. So kudos. If I had t-shirts, I would hook everybody up with the t-shirts. So, and for Richard, absolutely kudos on that. And he's worked very hard coming in here, taking over. And that was one of the areas that we were looking for completion and improvement. Kudos to Richard. Okay. The thing here with the Gifford Economic, I have a lot of stuff, but I'm not going to go into it today. The infrastructure and maintenance, those are a couple of things that I just wanted to just brush on. The right-of-ways, what I'm looking for our tax dollars to be spent accordingly is maintenance, follow-up, completion, touch-up, whether it's monthly, whether it's quarterly, but actually documented, having someone to come and perform those tasks. Now, I have seen some people out watering the trees. I saw a few people cutting back the palms that we picked on pretty bad. If we could continue that, and then some of the grass and so forth on 45th Street is starting to overgrow, and it's kind of taken away from a beautiful job. So if we could stay on top of that, and I'll get with Richard or whichever department. The area on 49th Street, I see that 2 of the areas have, well, one is the culvert has been replaced, and then the one on 33rd, which is near the trailer park, that's still under construction. And I look forward to a completion there, and that area was pretty bad, and I think I had stated that before. I have not had a chance to put a letter together, and don't think well of me, because right now my editor's upset because I haven't submitted any articles for publishing.
Scott, excuse me, Ms. Offit, if you could take that outside, please. We've got a meeting going on. Thank you. Sorry, Ms. Scott.
Thank you. So I will get back, I will get the letters out to the County Commission Board. The discrepancies, it's not that I've forgotten about it, it's just that my plate is like 3 feet high, and sometime I ask myself, am I retired or am I working on a clock? And my answer is, I'm retired, but I'm working 28 hours in a day. It's only 24 hours. So I do this out of passion and heart. There's no pay, so, but anyway, so that I'm looking, if, I just lost my place here, just a moment. Okay, well, I guess it's enough said on that. Keep in mind on, I know the fiscal workshop for the fiscal budget is coming up, or it is up, or I'm not sure what your timelines are. I am here before you to just reiterate to keep in mind for Gifford that it would be a good idea to put us on that fiscal budget, a line item for maintenance, for repairs. I think if I wouldn't have been shaking the trees, we wouldn't have caught some of the areas on 49th Street, which were really, really, really bad. Not just neglect, but a negligent condition. So if you would keep in mind for the fiscal budget, and at least some dollar amounts for Gifford for maintenance, the areas, and there's some areas that are really, really in bad shape, but we're working on it. I appreciate it. Also keep in mind the MSDU, the pond on 41st Street. I think I had brought that up a few months ago, that we're paying $10 per parcel for drainage, and there's no drainage from Old Dixie Highway to 28th Avenue. Well, actually on the east side of 28th, there starts a few little culverts, but on the west side, I think you have more of the culverts, like four or three. And, if you would consider that when you're doing the budget, because that's up, I think it's on there every year, that $10 per parcel. And we talked about, paying for something that services we're not receiving. So just keep that in mind and consider the Gifford area for the fiscal budget as a line item for money to repair, maintenance, and then the other areas that we need, that I will get a letter to you this week. I'm going to, whatever I have to do, just sit down and get this letter, some of the discrepancies, but also a lot of the improvements that have been taken care of. And I am pleased with the improvements. Please keep up the good work, County Commission Board. I'm short.
Thank you very much, Ms. Scott. Next up is a public discussion item, a request to speak from Michael Marsh. Good morning, Mr. Marsh. Name and address for the record, please.
Yes, sir. Good morning. Michael C. Marsh, P.O. Box 6910, 61 Vero Beach. Thank you very much for your time this morning. First off, I want to start off by saying, Indian River County, we have a problem. And that problem is taking place at the Indian River County Courthouse. I'll give you some background, make 4 quick points, and then ask you for what I feel would be a solution to the problem. First off, it was brought to my attention November of last year that there was fraud taking place with an indigent package that was being submitted, and at this time I brought it to the attention of our clerk of the court, which if he was here today maybe it would be a little helpful, but he's on vacation, so maybe I can come back when he is here. And I mentioned to him and said, listen, you have a form that was turned in at 10:30 in regards to a dissolution of marriage. On that form it states 000 across the board. There's no assets, there's no nothing. But 11 o'clock in the morning, you have a petition that states you have $80,000 of assets. Well, sure, you could admit certain things, make a little mistake, but to go from 0 at 10:30 to 80,000 at 11, there's no other way to slice it. It's fraud. Had a meeting with Clerk Smith. He left me a voicemail and said, Mr. Marsh, I will make sure that I look into this. During the meeting, it was brought to my attention that this isn't the first time this has happened in Indian River County. The clerk himself went to Judge Canorak years ago and basically was told that there's nothing that could be done. Our courts are so liberalized that they don't even have access to go on the property appraiser's website. I'm listening. You don't even have access. So you mean to tell me someone could come in and you have something that's public? I can go on the property appraiser's website and see exactly if someone owns a home here in Indian River County. So someone could go into the clerk of the courts and just lie across the board, and the clerks have no way of verifying anything. So I listened because I don't know what goes on at the courthouse, and he said to me, Mr. Marsh, I'm going to sit down with Judge Pay, because now it's no longer Judge Canorac. And yes, I spoke to my own attorney about this years ago, and that is a problem. So I said, can you imagine if everyone in Indian River County knew that if you wanted to go file anything, dissolution of marriage, anything that you can get your filing forms waived, that you can go in there, you could own 10 different Mercedes and say 0. And what can the courts do? 0. So I found that to be a problem. So I waited a few weeks. During this course of time, something else took place at the courts. I am a local activist, and first and foremost, I would like to, it's not like I'm just up here complaining the whole time, but I would like to say that your county attorney called me right back immediately, and I do appreciate that, because unfortunately, sometimes when you're an activist, you're not too well liked in the county. Having said that, while I was waiting for Clerk Smith to call me back, I was recording one of the clerks here, because my indigency form was denied. Why was it denied? Because I'm Michael Marsh. I appealed the denial and was granted from Judge Peg that yes, under Florida state statute, I am indigent. Well, why would this clerk do something like that to me? Because she doesn't like me. So I recorded the incident. And all of a sudden I was yelled at and screamed, "You cannot record me." Can't record you. There's no expectation of privacy at the courthouse. Check the Florida Supreme Court for that. So I went over to the sheriff's office, said, "Deputy, Sergeant," I said, "Listen, I want to go back in here, I want to record." "Wait a second, are you recording me, Mr. Marsh?" "Not this time I'm not, but there's no problem with that. I could record any sheriff's deputy during their capacity of their job." So I walked back in there. Well, if you walk in the courthouse and the cashiers, you'll see a big eye in the sky. The camera's recording me. So if I'm being recorded, I can't record your clerks, Mr. Smith? "Mr. Marsh, I'll look into that." "Okay, no problem." So now everything is looked into, and I get an email back from Mr. Smith. And I could read it verbatim, but for time-wise, it said, "Spoke to my attorney, and yes, a clerk cannot be recorded, and you know it's against the law to record somebody without their permission." Incorrect, but correct. The Florida wiretapping law goes to cell phones, any phone. If I'm recording you, I have to tell you, "Listen, I'm recording you right now." And then I have to, and that's it. This does not pertain to Florida wiretapping at all. We are at a public venue, the Indian River County Courthouse. There's no expectation of privacy by the clerks. There's no expectation of privacy in the sheriff's office. But I read the rest of the email, and it says that he dealt with his clerk internally. So I wrote him back. It's been, I don't know, maybe a month. No response. During this time, the last thing I've tried to do to look into this matter was speak to your county attorney. And we had the conversation of, well, where does it say that you can record, Mr. Marsh? And I will say this. It's not my burden of proof to prove anything when the Florida state statute reads clearly. There's no signs inside of the courthouse that tells me I cannot come in there and record. As soon as you come in, the sheriff's office is doing their job. I guess it takes 6 of them, but they're doing their job. I could walk in there, record as soon as I go through that door. Why am I being prevented from doing this? My last point, because I know this is the county commissioners, and for my last time being here, told what you guys can and cannot do. Maybe you can't give me any information in regards to any of this, but let me tell you my solution. Because I'm not just passionate about coming here and telling you what the sheriff is doing wrong, what the clerk is doing wrong. I want to see change, and I want to see a solution. So here's my solution, and I want to do this free of charge. If the clerk of the courts are not allowed to go to the property appraiser's website, 30 seconds, property appraiser, put in the name, oh, look, they own a home. This is denied. That's how easy this is. Can you imagine, just in a dissolution of marriage, the filing fees are about $600. How many times does that $600 got to be multiplied that Indian River County Courthouse is going to lose?
Mr. Marsh.
Yes, sir.
If I may, to the board, if the board would like. as we talked about on the phone the other day. Essentially, it's like the supervisor of elections isn't able or does not have the authority under the law to look underneath the statements that are made in a sheet or a document filed with her with regards to someone's residency. So if someone was to come in and say, so-and-so doesn't live in that district, they lied, supervisor, it's not for the job for the supervisor to go, well, let me go research that issue. It's the job of the supervisor of elections to go, they check the following boxes, all those boxes need to be checked, we're done. To the extent you have a dispute as to whether they are in that district or not in that district, you take that up with the courts. Same thing in this circumstance. The clerk is not able to start looking underneath the statements made in such a form. They review them, make sure the appropriate boxes are checked, and essentially either agree that they were or were not properly done and submitted accordingly. To the extent you have an allegation of fraud, as we talked about, that either needs to go to the judge in your case, it needs to go to the sheriff's office, or it needs to go to the state attorney's office. The clerk has a ministerial responsibility merely to check to make sure that the appropriate boxes were filled. I don't have a way for the board to otherwise get involved in that issue.
Two things, May, if I respond to that. Number one is I understand that the board can't do, but however, when you tell me, the state attorney's office, I'm not the victim. The state of Florida is the victim. I cannot go to the state attorney's office. I've done every channel. State attorney's office told me, Mr. Marsh, you're not the victim. What can we do here? Nothing. Sheriff's office, they don't care. Vero Beach Police Department, Mr. Marsh, you're not the victim. The detective told me, listen, if the clerk of the court, Mr. Smith, calls over here, we'll look into it. So I said, well, that's easy. Of course the clerk has to care, and there's not a matter of if there's fraud. It would take you 10 seconds to read 2 documents and see that, oh, this is fraud. So I'm not saying allegedly, it is fraud, and someone has to care. So as far as the board goes, I would like to know, one, this whole policy that I can't record inside of a courthouse, I'm sure someone can shed some light on that, because there is no signs. It is against my rights to tell me I cannot record. So I'd like the board to hear that. And lastly, I want to create some type of citizen board that can help the Indian River County Courthouse, because it is public record for me to go on a property appraiser's website and say, Dylan Reingold, does he own a home? He does own a home. I want to do that. I would like maybe get some other members in the community, get some volunteer hours. I don't want 1 penny. My thing is I want to see a solution. If there's a statute out there that it needs to be adhered to, someone needs to care, and that's my point. And I would like to leave this open for discussion with you guys.
So you want us to do something, if somebody files a false form with the clerk, and it goes from there into the court system?
No, sir. What I'm looking for, when someone files indigent status,
Okay.
that there's a way to go through and find out, is this person really indigent? As far as the fraud goes, obviously a normal citizen can't do anything. That's for law enforcement, state attorney's office.
Okay, let me ask you this. What dollar figure is deemed to be indigent?
Well, they have their own calculations, and that actually was a problem.
Okay, who are they?
The clerk of the courts. Well, per Florida state statute, there's a poverty guideline threshold, like 110 percentile that they go by.
Okay,
And
all right, let me ask you this. Is that based on your net worth, or is that based on your income?
that's based on income, your assets, any type of assets that you have, that's what that's based on.
It is, okay.
Yes.
All right, so if they lie about their income, but they have a $85,000 house, according to an assessed value, does that make them indigent, or does that not make them indigent?
No, well, it's a whole equation. If the clerk was here, that part, I mean, I just read the statute part of it, and the statute doesn't state exact what they can and cannot make. It just goes in there and makes reference to if you file fraud. The clerk would know that answer. However, the indigent form doesn't even ask for any paycheck stubs, doesn't ask for anything. So even if the form itself said your last 2 paycheck stubs, so there's some type of proof, it's literally, and I should have brought it, but the clerk wasn't here, but it's one form, and there's like 5 sections.
And in this process, you're somebody would go through the indigent status to determine whether or not a lawyer is going to be appointed for them?
No, sir. That would be indigent in the criminal realm. As far as civil, like a dissolution of marriage, you're not afforded an attorney, so you don't have a right to counsel. However, you do have a right to have your filing fees, the filing forms, anything associated, summons to the sheriff's office, all that you have the ability to have waived. In the civil arena, there is no right to an attorney.
Commissioner Davis.
Yes.
May I ask Mr. Rangel a couple questions? This indigent statutes, it sounds to me like these are state statutes.
Yes.
And they are issued by some state board or state agency.
Well, there are statutes which are obviously codified by the Florida legislature. There are rules, or separate rules that may be adopted by a particular board. I'll be honest, I'm not as familiar with the indigent rules of determining that in this type of civil case.
And what you've said is basically under the state statute, what the county clerk's job is to basically fulfill a ministerial function.
That is correct.
Okay, sir, it sounds to me that this is a state issue, that there's probably some state agency involved, and that those are the people you ought to be addressing for this. Because we have no authority to change a state statute in any way, and we have no authority to direct the clerk of the court to do something in contravention to a state statute. So we are not in the position to be of much help to you. It sounds like if there's an issue, it is with a state agency, and it could be that the state statutes are drawn poorly, and if you can come up with a clear path forward with that, we can make that a legislative issue if we feel that then the state statute needs to be changed. But short of that, I don't believe there's anything we can do in this case.
Well, I mean, but if somebody is lying, if you will, or gaming the system, that's not right. And I think that's what you're here trying to say is,
Yes, sir.
if somebody is not telling the truth whenever they do a form, where's some,
But there should be a state agency who examines those forms, and if it's not, that's the state statute that needs to be changed.
I'm not asking for a state statute to be changed.
well,
But it has to.
it very well may be, and that's what I'm trying to figure out here. And Bob's saying, the chairman's saying, this is a state issue, and it very well could be. But just so I'm sure, and I don't like to give the government runaround as a commissioner, but what I'm trying to figure out is, if somebody's being untruthful whenever they fill out the form to declare indigent status, is it anybody's responsibility to check it? And if so, who?
You know, as I said earlier, I think it's a ministerial task to the extent it needs to be examined or the issue comes up. One of the issues I talked with Jeff Smith about was he said that really issue should be taken up with the judge, who is essentially the judge over that matter, and then the judge can direct accordingly. That was the way we
There's your
talked about
outlet.
it.
Okay.
Court
That-
administrator, court
that-
administrator's office. Yeah.
Okay, at least now I know if I were concerned as you are about this, what I would do. And it's not through do you understand, I'm pretty clear on what he said regarding why this is not the clerk's responsibility, why this is not the clerk of the circuit's, our clerk. Wouldn't make no sense for he would have no jurisdiction over going back to that individual and saying, okay, we're not going to file this until you pay us because, oh, by the way, we see what kind of car you're driving or something like that. He has no jurisdiction in that, I would imagine. But it would be whenever somebody gets to court in front of a judge, and if this is indeed happening to you, where you paid your fees but the other side didn't pay theirs and declared indigency status, then you can say, Your Honor, I just want to correct this before we move any further in this divorce or whatever. And then that way the judge would look at it and say, well, I'm going to order you to either bring in your last 3 paycheck stubs and tell me your net worth, or strike the fees to the clerk of the circuit court, and then you'd have that's your resolve in this issue.
Well, I've already done that, Commissioner Davis, and I appreciate that. I've tried that to no avail. Judge Peg didn't care.
Well,
never addressed it.
Okay, all right. Well, in that case, I don't mean this. He's an elected position. He's got powers by the Constitution of the state of Florida that judges have that we don't. That if he said no to you, then your only option, in my opinion, and I'm not playing an attorney here, but I did walk in the parade yesterday, and your next, would be to appeal that judge's decision.
That's what I'm doing.
Okay, and then you can continue to go up as high to the Supreme Court as you possibly would like to get through this process. But your frustration here today is, at least I'm educated on the process, so it wasn't a total waste of time. I don't mean to hurt your feelings, but at least now I understand what you're trying to do, and if you ask me more questions about it, I can try to help you better. But this, clearly, you're going in the direction that you need to go to be able to get some resolution to this, but it's not here, and it's not with the clerk. Now, going back to as far as recording, we're being recorded right now.
Yes, sir.
Okay, I just didn't want you to get scared.
No, there's nothing scary,
Okay.
Mr. David. But my last two quick things is, one, as far as creating something in the community, a board that can do something like this. I mean, I'm not asking for access to anything personal.
Well, but which issue are you talking about now with the community board?
Now, as far as creating something to where I can go on a property appraiser's website and say, hey, clerks, look, they have a home right here in Indian River County.
Well, see, you had that opportunity to do that in front of the judge.
Yes,
I mean-
and I already did so. But what
Okay.
I'm saying, not just in my situation, I'm saying for the next indigent form that gets filed, I would like to create something.
I like what you're talking about. I really do, because I don't like for anybody, I mean, if somebody needs help, by God, I want you to be the first one to help them. But if somebody's gaming the system, it's just not right.
Yes, sir.
And so I like where you're going with that. I don't see, this commission, we've done everything we can to try to limit the number of committees. We've cut back on some of them. We found that, especially during the economic recession, it took a lot of staff time, and quite frankly, many of them were just committees that enjoyed, in my opinion, just listening to themselves speak. So what we pretty much have reduced some of these things back, and I'm not really with you on wanting to form a committee, but if you want to get together a group of volunteers and y'all want to make this your burning issue, and you can call it the committee against people that doing fraud, and that's COTIF, or make up a cute acronym like everybody else likes to do.
I shall.
And do it.
And the last thing, as far as recording inside of court, see, it would be easier if the clerk was here, because some of the things I don't have an answer to, the clerk would. So I would like to come back, and a couple of the questions that didn't get answered, I'd like to ask the clerk
Well,
at a later
and
date.
the best thing for you to do then is go to the clerk and do it. I mean, ask those questions. As far as doing it here, this is a business meeting of the county commission, and I don't know that it really would be appropriate for y'all to have a debate in front of us on an issue about your concern there. You're better off going and talking with him about that directly, and if...
I've tried.
Well, I don't know what to say other than this, coming here is not going to fix it.
Okay. All right. Thank you, County Commissioner.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have a request to speak from Hampton Jackson. Good morning. Name and address for the record, please.
Yes, sir. Which podium?
Either one.
Okay.
Both yours.
Yes, sir. My name's Hampton Jackson. I'm a resident of Indian River County, and I come before the board in request of the Old Gifford Gardens Apartments. I currently have that property listed as a real estate agent, and I'm requesting that the demolition lien and the $200,000 in water and sewer liens that have accumulated on the property since it was demolished in April of 2012 be released so that we can redevelop it.
Who do you represent, sir?
K2 Management, sir.
And where are they from?
They are out of Texas.
And how long have they owned the property?
January of last year.
January of 2015?
Yes, sir.
Thanks. I don't know about the other commissioners, but that property had been a blight on the community for a long time, and no owner, basically, for the last probably 25 years has been responsible, including, in my view, the K2 management firm. And there is substantial value in that property, particularly in the form of impact fees and
Yes, sir.
water. Okay, so there's a lot of value in there. And I myself have no desire to just hand that value over to some third party when both the community has suffered for decades because of that property, and the county commission is out thousands and thousands of dollars. So if there's a different proposal some other time in the future, I'd be happy to listen to it. But by spending $86,000 of the taxpayers' money to take down that property, we not only took a blight off the community, but we added value to that property. And so the citizens' money added value to that property. So I'm not inclined in any way to, at this time, reduce or eliminate these charges from
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
The way normally this would work is you would have somebody put this property under contract, and you would not be able to deliver clear title based on the county liens, utilities, et cetera. And then at that point is where this board would have to make a decision either to shave off some of those liens, interest, penalties, et cetera. I'm going to be with Commissioners, the chairman on this, as far as coming in here with a would you take and us go ahead and making decisions based on that. It was the right thing to do, and in my opinion, at the time whenever we did it, and that was we used county taxpayer dollars to go in there and get rid of this scourge in the community, if you will. And if I'm not mistaken, I think that we lost that $85,000 though, or whatever it was, the demolition cost, because we got foreclosed off title on that. No?
No, we actually still have that.
Okay, good. I didn't know if it went through the foreclosure process. I was concerned about, because that lien is not a super lien like delinquent taxes are, or the utility liens that are on that property. So, you put it under contract, and
No,
if it's
sir.
upside down?
No, sir. The liens on the property highly outweigh the value of the property.
I don't dispute that, but do you have a contract on it?
No, sir, not at this time.
Okay, see, what you're asking us to do is to give up something right now of the taxpayers' dollars that we don't know we have to. I do agree with you, it is probably upside down, but we don't know that until somebody goes out there and puts it under a real legitimate contract.
Well,
So
no.
what I'm getting at is whenever you get an offer with somebody puts cash up and you just simply make it subject to the being able to deliver clear title, and the only people that can deliver clear title in this instance would be this board up here at the time. And we don't know until you put it under contract that you need our decision. It very well may be, I doubt it, but it very well may be that somebody comes in there and offers what's owed. Then you don't need us. You pay off the county's liens and interest and penalties, et cetera. And then your title company will be able to insure that property at the time.
Now, it may be that the easiest thing to do is to just have KT2 management deed the property over to us, the Indian River County, and we'd probably be open to something like that.
Okay. K2 is actually the asset management company that works for the hedge fund.
Okay, so K2 is not the owner?
No, K2 is not the
Okay,
owner. You
my
asked me,
okay.
if I may, you asked me who I represent, and I represent K2.
No, I also asked who the owner of the property
Oh,
was.
the owner of the property is MACWCP.
I'm sorry, could you say
Yes,
that
sir.
one again slowly?
MACWCP 3, 4, and 5 Roman numerals. And what they did was they hired a asset management company that wasn't properly attending to the property, letting the grass get overgrown and so on. And K2 was, the old company was let go, and the new company, K2, was hired, and I represent K2. So as soon as I got involved, I got the property cleaned up and so on. So just trying to rebuild it so it becomes positive towards the community again. It's zoned RM10 at this time, so that's what, 10 units to the acre, 3 acres, so it's a maximum of 30 units.
Yeah.
So,
Mr. Chair?
Commissioner Davis.
I'm sure that the hedge fund has assigned a certain value on this piece of property. They would have it, if it's in their portfolio, they'll know, and they probably have it, will list it with you, I would imagine, and with what they expect to get out of that. Now, in that event, if it's upside down from that or something like that, that's where we may be able to help with some penalties and interest, as we have in the past. But again,
you
there's
needed
not
to be under contract.
absolutely, because I mean,
Understood.
there's no need in us giving up a dime of the taxpayers' money to get that property back on the tax rolls and get productive in the Gifford community again, until we're certain that somebody's going to do something beneficial with it.
Understood.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question. And I don't have my copy. What was the impact fee value? It's pretty significant.
Well, there's one that was done based on the impact fee credit for 55 multifamily units, and that's $271,480.
And so that has a credit. If you do a little spreadsheet, some people like spreadsheets a lot.
Useful tools.
If you're comparing in the community, if they were looking at 3 acres that had never been built on and 3 acres at this particular site, this one, when you go through the permitting process, has a $270,000 credit, which is greater than the liens that are out there. So even if they did satisfy them, they're still going to come out much further ahead in the permitting process at the end of the day because of this existing credit that's sitting there, which is,
Do you understand what he's saying?
Yes, I do.
Okay, all right.
and we've had a chance, we've met once in the office before. Also, I think code enforcement you already had visited with them as one of the earlier steps.
Yes, sir, I
And
did.
they came up with a adjusted
resolution.
amount, a
Yes, sir.
resolution for that. So with the amount of credits that sit on the property and maybe communicating that to the folks, the higher up that are trying to determine how to build, if they go to build somewhere else, they're going to pay probably a 270 or more to build 30 units, well, potentially. Versus if they build that site, they have a $270,000 credit on their permits and impact fees, which is greater than the lien value. So, but it would be nice to get some more housing in there for the community and get it into a tax-paying
Yes, sir.
entity. So, if there's something else in that area we can help you with, or myself, happy to do that as
But
well.
understand that when whoever it is, MACWCP, bought the property, they were aware of the liens and the different problems that were on the property, or should have been. And,
Should have been.
well,
Yeah.
okay, but so, and my guess is, especially if they're a hedge fund out of,
New York.
New York, favorite place for hedge funds lately in Union
Yes,
County.
sir. Yes, sir.
I mean, I'm not going to be disposed in any way to let the hedge fund have all the excess value of this property when they haven't fulfilled their duties, as opposed to the taxpayers of Indian River County. I mean, I'm going to protect the taxpayers of Indian River County first, and not get all the value of all the impact fees and everything, and the value, whatever the value of the land is, float off to New York somewhere. So I just,
Hence the need for the contract. If you put it under contract, that way we can make the determination. I'm right with you, Commissioner.
this is a big moment here. This is going to be our new county administrator's first time to speak. Mr. Brown, please.
I hope it's good, Mr. Chairman. for
We
the
do
record.
too.
This sets the bar.
County Administrator.
Don't let that pressure you.
Right. I'm shaking. Staff does have some concerns about reducing this. We think the purchaser should have been aware of the liens. In addition to that $271,000 in impact fees, that doesn't include the utility impact fees.
Oh, correct.
So
That's even
you're looking
higher.
at almost $200,000 there. So there's a substantial value there. In our research, according to the county attorney's office, the property taxes have not been paid on this property since MACWCP.
You mean the new owners haven't even paid the property
Correct.
taxes?
So we have concerns about that, and also our utility liens are important, and we do make those other customers pay those. So we've got a concern about waiving those as well.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman. Commissioner Fletcher.
Mr. Jackson, I appreciate you coming before us to throw this appeal or initiate an appeal.
Yes, sir.
And I understand that you did speak with code enforcement and there has been some headway.
Resolution, yes, sir.
Yes, some resolution. I think that's about where the resolution is. Again, I dealt with that property when it was the community blight, when I wore a green uniform and had to respond on a daily basis. And there is nobody up here that's more pleased that it no longer exists. In getting that process done, we had to appeal to the community. We had a public hearing, and then we had the discussion on demolition. And I think in full faith to our taxpayers, our residents, our citizens who supported that process, the people of the community were in support of getting rid of that blight. When they did that, I think we entered into a contract that they knew that their tax dollars were going to be invested in the demolition. And, now we're looking at a hedge fund as opposed to people here that don't even have hedges.
I'm not here on
And we
behalf
have
of the
to be-
hedge fund. I was more so here on trying to get it rebuilt and make it positive towards the community.
And I respect that, but by the same token, I don't see any latitude in looking at what we have invested in to make this a better place, and that I believe that caveat emptor, let the buyer beware, that they should have done their due diligence to know that maybe this isn't, there are good investments and bad investments, and this might have been a bad investment on their part. They can turn it around because they have other good investments. So I think they have to do a little bit of cost averaging and maybe look into it in that respect. I don't think it should be on the backs of the taxpayers, the good citizens of Indian River County. They entrusted us to make the best decision for them. So I don't see any latitude, but that's one guy.
Understood.
One last question, Mr. Chairman. Is K2 the one that's interested in building the apartments, or is it another entity?
No, sir. It's another entity. K2 is interested in selling it.
Selling it to
Selling
someone
it
else?
to whomever wants to rebuild the 30 units.
Okay.
So
If you
I-
want, I can help put together a little spreadsheet so from a developer's aspect, they can see the credits that are out there and understand those and the value of the liens. But between the water and sewer and the credits on the prior units that were there, you're really up about a $400,000 number. And when somebody understands that, then they can realize if I don't have to pay that, but I got to satisfy the liens, which are much smaller than those, they can see how the numbers could work for them.
Except they may not be able to build the same 55 units
Oh,
on
true.
it. So it may
No,
be.
it's
You may
only
have
zoned
credits all that
R10
Right.
now, so it's
Yeah.
only 30 units max now.
Right.
Any other questions of me, commissioners?
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your time.
We now move to County Attorney Matters, Construction Board of Adjustments and Appeals appointment. Mr. Reingold.
Thank you very much. There's a vacancy on the Construction Board of Adjustment and Appeals. We have, it's the architect position. It's been open for a little while. We received a resume and an application. This is for Roy H. Lambert Jr. Simply just recommend that the board consider the application and the resume and vote whether you would wish to appoint this person to the Construction Board of Adjustment and Appeals.
So
Thank you with
moved.
that.
Second?
We have a motion from Commissioner Flesher, seconded by Commissioner Zork. Any questions? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Passes 5-0. We now move to Commissioner Matters. The first one is one of my matters, and that's dealing with short-term rentals in hotels. Gentlemen, after, I think we did an exemplary job with the recent short-term rental ordinance, basically with the help of community development, and I applaud their work there. But I think that basically treats the symptoms and not the cause. Indian River County is a county which has been developing its tourism business for a number of years and has been getting more and more success of late. I'll note that there's evidently the Chamber of Commerce just, I think, this morning or over the weekend sent us some articles on what they've done to promote tourism and how they've had some positive results, one of which is evidently an article entitled 5 Reasons Vero Beach is Your New Favorite Florida Destination, which was a very long article in Huffington Post. There's a recent Tampa Bay Times article which noted that Florida breaks another tourism record with 29.8 visitors in the first quarter, and it notes that tourism is growing at roughly 4% a year. And that is a significant number. And so on the one hand, we're building up demand for tourism, which is a demand for beds in Indian River County, but the supply has been basically stagnant. And I think that needs to be part of the discussion. So I would like it, if the board's approval, to ask the community development to take a look into hotels in general in Indian River County, doing things like let us know where hotels would be appropriate or possible in Indian River County, and also perhaps the city of Vero Beach, and to give us a list of the hotels with the number of rooms they now have, both east of US 1 and in the rest of the county, because I think east of US 1 is important, because I think those are the ones that basically service the beach and most of the tourists. And also in that report have their most current estimate of short-term rentals and whatever suggestions they have to increase the number of hotel beds in Indian River County. Because if we continue to push up the demand for tourism and tourists coming into the county, but don't increase the supply of hotel rooms, to me, the only place they can go is the short-term rentals.
Very
And-
nice idea, Mr. Chairman. I realize you can't make a motion to set forward staff to get into this process, so I'd be happy to do that. I believe that there is a very strong need, and I also want to add that the Treasure Coast Sports Commission has been in the forefront in the business of monitoring the hotel availabilities for all of the venues and have developed quite the equation as to assist in many events here in Indian River County. So I would like to include the involvement of the Treasure Coast Sports Commission as a resource for community development.
And I would like to include the Chamber of Commerce, both the Indian River Chamber of Commerce and the Sebastian Chamber of Commerce, because I think they ought to be part of the conversation. And different things, like I'd like the community development to take a look at impact fees for hotels in this. You know, because it may be that we, and I have no idea, I mean, I'd like to have the conversation first, but it may be that I think it's not too, how many years, Jason, do we have left on the payment, use of tourist tax dollars to pay off the Dodgertown bonds?
That pledge goes through 2021. So
Okay, yeah, in planning, it may be that we want to use some of that money to reduce the impact fee for hotels, that's similar to what we did with the last impact. I don't know, but I do know that over the next years, we need to get more hotel rooms in Indian River County if we're going to continue to increase tourism, which I think most of us want.
Absolutely.
So there's one speaker from the audience who wants to speak on this. Mr. Paladin, good morning, welcome.
Good morning, gentlemen. Like so often, you do.
Name and address for the record
Joseph
now.
Paladin, President of Black Swan Consulting, I'm sorry. 6450 Tropical Way, Vero Beach, Florida.
Thank you.
Like so often, I appreciate what you're doing here. You not only are addressing the problem, but the solution, some kind of solution to the problem. And I'd like to go a step further. As we passed the regulation for the short-term vacation rental to de-incentivize vacation rentals from going in the future 15, 20-room houses by putting the cap of 10 on it, which I fought hard to get done. I think let's maybe go into another direction to maybe come up with another tool in the toolbox, or to incentivize a hotel chain or a hotel being built here. And you addressed it briefly on the impact fees. I know that I've learned in the past that we just can't waive impact fees because it's got to come from somewhere. But maybe if we could put a tool in the toolbox and finance impact fees for a new hotel coming in and pulling a permit in the next 6 to 12 months, something like that, because we're basically financing something we wouldn't have, so we're not really putting a burden on the taxpayer. So I think if we could put another tool in the toolbox with the Chamber of Commerce and have them reach out to maybe hotel chains that would be interested in coming into the area, I would certainly be happy to use my professional experience in locating them a spot to put that.
Well, thank you very much. So, Commissioner Zork.
2 items to maybe just to consider when they're researching. In the hotel business development world, if you're going to end up getting a loan on a hotel property, they always say, what does your Smith Travel Research report show? Smith Travel is the guru of hotel development guidelines. So I don't know what it would cost for the county to potentially get a subscription or something where you can put in your location, and it will tell you a lot of this data you're looking for. What's the average capacity per night, price point per night, seasonally? You can really use it as a great tool.
What's it called again?
Smith Travel Research. Probably after Mr. Smith, I would suppose.
Or after Mr. Research.
Right. Secondly, in looking at kind of some of the back-end land development regulations, also looking at the rooms per acre that are allowed. And I'm not sure of this, but I believe the city is 30 rooms per acre, but I believe the county potentially might be less. So I think we need to look at all the contributing factors.
Absolutely.
And then lastly, as it relates with the Sports Commission involvement, which is great, is if we said we have 200 more room nights available for a event, but oh, by the way, they're $200 a night, that might not work well for them. So there's also a price point for different activities, whether it's Sports Commission contracts or Sports Commission work that groups are trying to bring in. There is a sweet spot where you have to be, and the only way you can back into that is from a hotel developer side, how can he reach that price point? He either needs to get more units to the acre or some combination of things that allows them to provide rooms at a specific targeted price point. So keeping those things in mind, I think, would be helpful.
But just so I have this right, we don't know that we have a shortage, but we think we do?
Oh, I think we know we have a shortage. I mean, I think
Okay.
two things. It's apocryphal, but I've been told that hotel rooms in Indian River County are among the most expensive in Florida.
Really?
Yeah, which to me is a suggestion that demand is very high. But to me, the fact that we have over 600 short-term rentals is another indication that demand exceeds supply of hotel rooms. So
I wonder why then, just thinking out loud, why the market hasn't began to remedy this problem.
Well, one of the reasons is because we've got a lot of barriers in front of it. And it may be, again, because short-term rentals so easily filtered out. I mean, when you're just adding a unit at a time by short-term rentals, that's a lot easier and faster and less expensive than a new hotel. But keep in mind, two things have happened in the last year. One is the city of Vero Beach has totally barred rentals. And I'm told with that one, there seems to be a black market developing in the city of Vero Beach. And Indian River County just put an ordinance to restrict short-term rentals. And if we're serious about those regulations, then first, most probably, we're going to lose some supply of short-term rentals, and certainly we'll get fewer short-term rentals going forward. So again, we're putting straitjackets around what was our sort of pressure release. And again, if we really want to reduce short-term rentals, I believe we need to have alternative places for people to stay, or else they're going to just stay in a different community. So for me, everything's, and again, this is why I'd like the community development to take a much stronger look and make this part of the discussion, hopefully go before the Tourist Development Board and get their input and stuff. Because again, for me, it's just little bits and pieces putting together, but it suggests, again, if there are, and I don't know what the number is, 1,000 hotel rooms in Indian River County, 4% growth rate is 50 hotel rooms a year. So we're talking about a new hotel every 2 years. So, and we came through the Great Recession. Okay, I mean that was a period of reduced demand and stuff, but everything we're doing done in the last 3 years, and I believe everything we'll probably do in the next 4 years, is just going to increase tourism and the demand for rooms. I'm certainly hoping. I'm hoping we go up 5% a year. So
we open up the facility down South County.
I mean, this is everything we're doing is designed to bring in 4, 5, 6% more tourists a year. And you can see the problem. And this is, the solution is going to take time.
Yeah.
I mean, it's nothing that's going to be done in 1 or 2
I
years.
do know that there's a hotel that has come in and had a technical review or a pre-application. I saw one of those out there near 95.
Outbase.
And 95 is nice, but I don't really think it helps us too much in terms of it being a tourist destination.
But it does work for the Sports Commission.
Oh, it helps some, but again, we would hopefully get something a little more convenient for tourists and better for the hotels, restaurants, shops, and stuff.
And real quick, you got to realize that a major hotel firm, which I've built some hotels around the country, their line, everybody has a line they have to go to in order to justify the expense. And usually a major hotel firm is looking at 100 rooms in order to make it worth their while to open a hotel. So based on our low rise and our low density, which is a plus in Indian River County, we limit ourselves as to those options that we can put forward in getting that done. So we need to have to look into that and find a piece of property or find a zoning and find a density where we have concurrency, where we have infrastructure, that would be a plus for the Chamber of Commerce to reach out and bring a hotel chain in. Because I've talked to several hotel chains in the area and along out 95 where we have a little more flexibility to build a higher density. That doesn't really achieve what we need here. We don't have a convention center here in town. If somebody wants to come in and do a big convention or a
Maybe
big
the city of Vero
business-
Beach will put one on the 17th Street Bridge.
Well, might be able to put one out there on the corner of Highway 1 and 510. But, you know, it depends.
That was a shameless plug, huh?
Got to do what I got to do. I got to make a living, fella. But anyway, that would be something to take into consideration as to what we could use for density, because if we can't get 100 rooms, we kind of rule out a lot of the major hotel chains.
Thank you.
But I appreciate you bringing this forward, and that's a great idea, and it's somewhere we ought to look into. Thank you.
Thank you. So basically, we have Commissioner O'Brien.
Yeah, couple things, and one is I don't think the proliferation of short-term rentals is due to the cost of hotel rooms. Vacation rentals have exploded throughout the entire state of Florida, and whether other counties have a lot lower hotel rates than us, they're seeing an explosion of short-term rentals. So I don't think it's related to the price of a hotel room. I think it is more related to the fact, two things. One is because of the Great Recession and and I think that's why we're seeing the increase in tourism here. But people, you know, they may still have their job now, but they have a whole new budget reality. And so instead of spending $14,000 to go to Colorado for a week of skiing, they're saying, hey, you know what, we can go to the beach in Vero for $3,000 and have a week there. So there's a price point, I think, that people are affected by because of the recession. And then secondly, the proliferation of the on-site services, vacation rental by owner, Airbnb. It's become very easy to find a house in the location you want. And I think a lot of people, and particularly when you talk about inviting families, you know, when my family travels, it's expensive to eat 3 meals a day in restaurants with a family. Very expensive. That's even more than the cost of your room. So one of the advantages of the house is, one, you have more space. You have a living room, you have a kitchen, you're going to have a porch. You know, you're not confined, a family of 5 jammed into a double bed hotel room. So the experience is better. And then secondly, you have a kitchen. So you can make breakfast.
Pot of coffee.
You can make sandwiches. You make a whole pot of coffee instead of getting just one, prepackaged filter. And then an endless supply of decaf. I don't know why that's always the case, but they give you one thing of regular coffee and about 40 decaf.
Yeah.
So I think the proliferation of short-term rentals is because it's a more desirable venue, particularly for families. And now just a couple coming down, they're coming for maybe a weekend, then sure, a hotel is appropriate, and they don't mind eating out a couple nights a week. So I think a lot of that is just because of the benefits of renting a house, the ease of finding a house to rent, or probably where people look first now and don't even look at the hotel prices. Secondly, although I realize this board can do anything we want as far as an economic incentive, hotels are not on our targeted industry list. Most of the jobs there are low wage, low skill. So I'd be real hesitant to be waiving impact fees. I think we can look at some of our land use and make sure we have appropriate locations and try to ease the permitting, but I'd be really opposed of any economic incentives for hotels just because the jobs they bring in aren't the jobs that are on our list. And then finally, I think hotels, in my mind, are just like a Publix. They're not going to go into the demographics, say they can make a dollar. And, just like the Publix on 53rd and US 1, they didn't move forward till we opened up 53rd to bring in Waterway Village and that demographic, and then they moved forward. I think hotels are going to be the same way. They, as Commissioner Zork said, I'm sure a lot of them are looking at us, looking at the numbers, and saying, okay, it's great that if the Sports Commission brings in or Dodgertown brings in a huge, 200-team baseball tournament for the weekend, and we don't have enough rooms for that weekend event. I don't know if a hotel is going to look at, and particularly maybe more of an upscale one if you're talking about east of US 1, their demographics may not survive on just 8 weekends a year of having a big high demand. They want to see that thing filled 80 or 85% occupancy over 12 months. So I think it's good we take a look at it and get an inventory. But I think, we should keep our efforts focused on just making sure that we have suitable land available and suitable zoning, and then a permitting process where we can make it as smooth and, efficient as possible.
Those are basically the type of things I want to make sure we have.
Okay.
So that's it.
If I may, Rick Hatcher, Executive Director of the Treasure Coast Sports Commission. And in regarding to the sporting events and the impact they have in the hotel rooms in Indian River County, we are continuing to see an increase with the venues being used. With the new IG Center coming aboard, it's going to be another valuable asset we're going to add to our inventory. But most of our events that we are seeing in presently are what we call retained, reoccurring events. So are these families, and it's really families that are coming here as a destination to see their kids compete, they're returning year after year. And what we're seeing is everything that they might be year one along I-95, the more they learn about Indian River County, they start moving eastward to different properties to start experiencing more of what Vero Beach or Sebastian or Indian River County has. And so to say they're just along I-95, price points maybe, but as these large tournaments, what we just had 2 weeks ago, they had 200 teams. You know, that was here. They're staying, and whether they were at the Comfort Inn and Suites, or either the Holiday Inn Express, or either Vero Beach Resort and Spa. I mean, you're finding folks that are starting to learn a little bit more about what is happening. So, and again, they're not what I term sports rooms. You know, doubles where you can put 4 kids in there.
And a cot.
And a cot, yeah, and you don't lose the toss because you'll sleep in the tub. But, you know, but as you move forward, there is a need, and it's growing really along the Treasure Coast.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, you know, 10 years back, I think we were working with trying to get a couple of sporting events here, and it was about flex rooms. And every time we discussed bringing in an event, we said we have X amount of rooms, and it's just not going to be. And recently, because of a lot of the draw and attention that we've gotten in sporting events and with historic Dodgertown and all of our venues and North County Pool, just about every event, you're seeing buses. And the buses are folks that are staying from Tampa. Tampa, that's on the West Coast. They're staying down in St. Lucie and then busing back up. So they're actually doing a double staycation for a sporting event. It used to be an occasional event. Now it's a consistent pattern. And I believe that any hotelier is going to look at, a hotel chain is going to look at the consistency value. And I think it's brought on a whole new need here in the community.
So whenever we had
I think we've really pretty much
Yes.
covered the issue, so I think.
We get
we're
a
ready.
second there, Mr. Chairman?
I'll be happy to second it. I mean,
I would like to ask one question, Commissioner. And we are beating this to death, but, you know,
Yeah.
we didn't expect a fast meeting with you, Chairman. So,
yeah, I still want, I'm still trying to get this done by 11 to keep Commissioner O'Brien happy, and time is going through the bottle there.
whenever you had the 200-team venue, how did they have, I'm assuming they had to go to St. Lucie County for rooms, is that true?
We actually, all 3 counties here along the Treasure Coast because of the number of venues that were needed. And once the schedule was released, we saw some reservations being canceled if they were not playing here in Indian River and then being picked up in St. Lucie County. So it's almost the trend of a large tournament like that.
One last question for while you're up here. When you book the team, I know on your site how you'll say hotel A, B, and C, where they can look at so we can track the heads on beds. Do we also include the higher price point markets for the people that have, hey, we were there last year, let's get closer to the beach? Do we also put them as an available way to track those, I don't want to say off-site rooms, but not where maybe the bulk of the team's staying, but they're moving away so we can better track?
We are moving in that direction because of the interest from the higher priced properties located on the beach. In the past, they chose not to really be part of having a team, but now it's more so of a family that might have a player on that team that's been becoming a little bit more appealing.
Or the grandparents that come.
Correct.
They may come for 2 days of the tournament and they want to stay right on the ocean. And right now, we can't really effectively track those that well because they book on their own. But if there's a way we can.
We're doing a better job trying to
Good.
track that, yes.
Great, thank you.
So we have the motion from Commissioner Fleischer, seconded by myself.
I know I'm short and I'm easy to be overlooked. When I was up here earlier, I wanted to mention that we reapplied to the state and the federal for reinstatement for the Gifford Economic Development Council. And one of our arms is the Chambers of Commerce. We have several other arms that we've since evoked and that's recognized by the state. And we want to be part of these loop in invited to these boards because we are official, not just in by name, but by state designation and by federal. And so we've paid the money. Economics is one of the things that we want to be part of, and economics would do us some good in the Gifford area. So we would like to be invited in those.
The easiest thing to do is to give your name to community development and Stan Bowling and ask him to include you in any emails that go out regarding this discussion on hotels.
Yeah, we want to be part of that, okay?
So we have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Passes 5-0. Thank you. Commissioner O'Brien, the completion of this meeting by 11 o'clock is all on your shoulders.
Will not be a problem, Mr. Chairman. My first matter is to ask the board to direct staff to rewrite section 956.15 of our codes, which regulates temporary signs. This section has basically become invalid due to a Supreme Court ruling of Reed versus the town of Gilbert, Arizona. And just a little, I think it's a little interesting background. In Gilbert, there was a church that kind of catered to the homeless, and on Friday, they would put out street signs and temporary signs saying, you know, churches on Sunday. And the town said, well, no, you can't put those out. You can only put them out on Sunday. And so it went to court, and actually the town won at every level, starting with the local and then circuit and then state Supreme Court, and the case went all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court, and they won all the way up to that point. And then the state Supreme Court said, you know, what you're really doing is you're trying to regulate the content of the signs and not a sign itself. And in your backup is some of the wording from that Supreme Court case. And then Judge Alito provided some of his guidance. And basically what the Supreme Court said is you can't regulate content. So we can't say we have an ordinance for political signs. We can't say we have an ordinance for real estate signs. We can have an ordinance for temporary signs. And then what we can regulate is the size of them, whether they're lit or unlit, whether they're permanent or temporary, how many feet from a roadway they have to be placed. A lot of things like that you can regulate, but you can't say, if it's a real estate sign, you know, here's the conditions, because that would be content-based. So it's interesting when you start delving into the implications of this, because you could say, okay, every house can have one temporary sign, and you know, so you're not saying if it's a real estate or political sign, you're just saying it's a temporary sign. You can say it can be up to 2 by 2, and you can only have one, and things like that. Well, then you say, okay, what if somebody has one of those little smaller signs that says protected by XYZ alarm company, and they want to put up a political or real estate sign? Well, then now do you allow them 2 temporary signs? You know, it just kind of snowballs, and then when you get to commercial properties, you know, a lot of these construction sites have 5 or 6 signs hanging on the fence, you know, architect so-and-so, land clearing so-and-so, you know. And so it can be kind of a nightmare trying to upgrade this, but basically I do know that the town of Sewell's Point, and I think staff has also talked and did a little bit on this, and a couple other cities or counties have revised their sign ordinance to be content neutral. So with that, I'd just like to move that the board direct staff to consider rewriting that section of our code to make it content neutral.
Motion from Commissioner O'Brien, second from Commissioner Fleischer. Any discussion?
I have one for Dylan. One frequent item that I get inquiries about when I visit their place of business is they have their allowable, actually they're using under their allowable signage for their commercial business. They occasionally will have a promotion of something and they put a banner up. As soon as the banner goes up, they get the code enforcement letter. I said, well, since they're under, can they put in a permanent sign frame where they would, on occasion, put in a different sign, the special of the month or whatever it happens to be, and interchange the signs? Apparently we have a rule that you can't change the wording on a permanent sign. So they're trying to figure out a way to be legal, but they do have the need to promote certain special events or special programs. When we look at this, is there a way to address that at the same time?
This seems to be two different matters. One is addressing a problem that's brought about by the U.S. Supreme Court, which is, I think, one issue. The other one is signs in general, which seems to me to be another issue, you know, which deals with size, message, and everything else. So unless the maker of the motion wanted to totally increase the size and scope of this, I think it'd be
Well,
at
I'm
least
just trying to see, is there, since they, according to this, they could actually take this, put a temporary sign out by the road, which I think they think is tacky. They don't want to do that. Their banner looks like a permanent sign until you look at it and see it's actually a removable, replaceable banner. So I guess under these rules, they could limit the size, but they could actually have a yard sign, stick it out by the road promoting whatever this special is under the way the court's ruled. Is that kind of your understanding?
My understanding is we can't regulate content.
Right.
We can only say if it's temporary or permanent, if it has a light on it or not a light. But I think what will happen is, I think as Roland and community development work through this, some of those issues will be discussed, because there's a car company in Orlando that has what they call smart glass or opaque glass. And during the day, it's just like a regular glass, but it's a covering on it. And at night, when they turn on the interior lights, the outside becomes a big advertisement. And so, you know, how do you regulate that? You know, so I think staff will, you know, have to work on this a little bit, but I think a lot of those things will just come up in the course of the research that they do on it.
Great. All right, thank you.
If I may, I know we specifically reference, or the board specifically references 956.15. Would it be okay with the board to include any other sections of the sign code to bring that up to par with what the Supreme Court is required to?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you very much.
And any of our ordinances now need to be content neutral in regards to signs, so whatever is
Appreciate that
appropriate.
authorization. I will make an interesting note, if I may, is that in an article that came out soon after the decision, the dean of the Yale Law School specifically said the decision was so bold and so sweeping that the Supreme Court could not have thought through its consequences.
Again, we have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Passes 5-0. Commissioner O'Brien.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My second item just last week was the Florida Association of Counties Annual Conference. Would like to start off with the FAC came up with a new publication entitled County Solutions. And that is Todd Tardif of our Stormwater Division at our Egret Marsh site. And that made the cover of the inaugural issue. Very nice article in there. Chairman Solari was quoted a few times about how we're using Spoonbill and Egret and Osprey Marsh and the Skimmer project as ways to clean up the water and do so in a economically or ecologically manner. And so it's a very good article. Everybody will be getting a copy. They're going to mail one to everybody, so you all will be getting that. But I just wanted to start off with that. It was a nice honor that we were put on the cover of the inaugural issue.
Commissioner O'Brien.
Yes, sir.
I think we should see if we can put this on the website.
Yeah.
I mean,
If they have an electronic link to it, sure.
Yeah, or one way or the other, if we can get this on the website. I always am amazed about how little so many people in Indian River County know about our facilities, and anything we can do to increase that knowledge, I think, is a plus.
Yep, absolutely.
My apologies for interrupting.
Jason, thank you. Some of the other things that came out during the meeting is, as you will remember, the governor had been looking for, I think it was $250 million for Enterprise Florida for incentives, and he did not receive that funding. And it looks like going forward, the House is very adamant against that type of funding. The current House Speaker, Representative Corcoran, is against it, and the future House Speaker, Representative Olivia, is also strongly opposed. So it looks like over the next 2, 3, 4 years that Enterprise Florida may be facing some severe headwinds. Airbnb, as the board will recall, we recently signed a contract with the clerk of court to start collecting the tourist taxes due on the rentals. And part of the agreement was kind of waiving any past tax liabilities. We were more focused on moving forward, you know, getting them signed up and collecting. And then apparently there is some debate over whether counties or the clerk of court have the authority to waive that tax liability. And Palm Beach County is currently in litigation over this, and Monroe County is considering it. So that'll be something we'll just have to keep an eye on to see if our contract is valid.
They're in litigation as the plaintiff or the defendant?
The Palm Beach County clerk is the plaintiff because they want to get the back taxes.
And they're at litigation with?
Airbnb.
For the back taxes.
For the back taxes.
And it was the county commission that agreed to it? Or,
I'm not sure if it was the
They
clerk
didn't
or
do the
the
first
commission.
part. They didn't do what we did. They just wanted.
Yeah, but, so, and apparently the attorneys, there's opinions on both sides, so that'll have to get settled out. In the upcoming session, there'll probably be a very comprehensive review of the criminal justice system, and there's a lot of movement now to, to try to reduce your jail population, a lot of out-of-jail programs out there, a lot of companies providing that service, so we'll see some work with that. There's also a couple things related to the juvenile justice system, is that there was a bill passed for alternative results for minor technical parole violations. In about, it's a pretty high number, I think they said about 60% of parole violations were for minor technical reasons, like late for a curfew or something like that. And the current system is that person goes back to jail and they're in there for a few days, so they get a hearing, and they may end up losing a job because they missed the days. So this will allow parolees to stay out of jail for those minor technical violations, and that's something that we need to go through the court administrator to make the request, but Florida statutes allow that. The governor did show up, and he did a ceremonial signing of the DJJ bill, which is where we split with the state on a 50-50 basis, and that was a huge event. The keynote speaker was an Air Force pilot, Captain Charles Plum, who was shot down in Vietnam. He had flown 75 combat missions, and he was about 6 days from being sent home. Flew another mission, got shot down over enemy territory, and then spent the next 2,103 days in an 8x8 cell as a POW.
Gee whiz.
And I won't go through this whole presentation, but obviously his message to take home was adversity is a horrible thing to waste. So with the fellow POWs, they came up with a communication system of taking a thin piece of wire and running it in a hole between the two cells, and then by a series of tugs, kind of like a Morse code type thing, they were able to communicate. And it was a very inspirational message, but his point again was adversity, turn it around, make the best of it, and become stronger for having to go through the adversity. Presentation from St. Johns River Water Management District, the Executive Director, Ann Shortell. Her goal is to go to kind of a 5-year work program for water quality and quantity projects, much like FDOT's 5-year work plan. So you start off with, there might be some planning or design, and then there might be right-of-way acquisition, then construction, and it kind of moves through. So the message I got from that is it would be important for us to create a pipeline of projects to get that continued funding through their competitive cost share. They're going to keep that at $25 million. So I think we need, and we already have staff kind of working on a master septic to sewer plan. And I think once we get that, we need to start trying to plug that in to the 5-year workshop. Presentation on the Zika virus. So far, there's been 232 imported cases in 24 counties. 41 of those cases are pregnant women, so it's getting to be pretty prevalent. They do have one documented case that Zika was transmitted sexually, so that's kind of a little bit different than most mosquito-borne viruses. They have detected the Zika virus in breast milk, saliva, and urine, which is also pretty uncommon for most mosquito-borne viruses. And then unlike other viruses, it's actually a very mild disease as far as impacts the normal person. The most common symptom is a rash, but obviously it's the complications of pregnant women that give it the importance. Most of the feeling was kind of, at some point we think there will be local transmission, so that's when someone traveled to Brazil, they picked up the virus, they're asymptomatic, they don't really know they have it, they come home, they sit on their back porch, they get bit by a local mosquito, that mosquito then bites the spouse or the kid, and then you'll have a locally transmitted case. But they don't see it exploding like some of the other mosquito-borne diseases. And then finally, mental health. Last session, Senate Bill 12 was passed stating that by July of 2017, every county must have a new plan for any door access for mental health care and wraparound services, and it would require a central receiving facility. I have already mentioned this to Kate and the attorney's office to start looking into that, but almost everybody there had never heard of this and said, what? You know, I mean, kind of seems like an unfunded mandate and what's going on, and a July 2017 deadline. So just Kate at some point will come back and update us with that.
What did you call that? A door?
They call it any door access. So I think what they're implying is if whether somebody gets arrested with mental health issue, if they get a Baker or Brinkman Act, or just voluntarily come in. So any door that they come through, they have to have access for mental health care. And then the wraparound services could include, counseling and medications and care and whatever else it takes, and a central receiving facility to process these folks when they come in. And again, there's a lot of details that aren't there, and that's why I asked Kate to look into this and give us more information on that. But it just kind of, it went off on my radar as, well, I've never even heard of this, but it sounds like a lot of mandates coming our way that we ought to start looking at. So, and that, Mr. Chairman, the next upcoming meetings are the policy conference, September 14 through 16, right down the street in Martin County, and the legislative conference, November 30 through December 2nd in Orange County. And that is your FAC update.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Bryant.
One question on the speech that pilot made. I saw 2 cameras in the back videotaping it. Do you think that might be a place where we could tell people that was they highlighted on the stage an 8x8 room, and he did his talk pacing back and forth as he did for all those. 3 steps each way, and kind of lived his entire life of what took place then. But it's whether you're a student or young or old, I think there's a lot that could be learned from people watching that for the 15 minutes or so that it was. But it was a very moving presentation.
And Mr. Chairman, if I may, because I have 2 minutes, one of the things he brought up is after Vietnam, they did a study of Air Force pilots that had never been a POW, and then they did a study of the pilots that were POWs. And they found out that the non-POW pilots had a fairly high percentage of the PTSD, the post-traumatic stress syndrome, and only 4% of the POWs suffered from it. So that kind of went to his point that adversity just made you mentally stronger. You had to get over the issues. And so coming out, even though they 2,100 in 3 days in an 8x8 cell, he came out mentally stronger than those pilots that had never had to undergo that. So it was a great talk. Not quite as good. I don't know if any of you all were there with a guy that was the quadriplegic and got out of the wheelchair and started walking around. That one was pretty good as well. But Captain Plum was very good and very inspirational.
And since there's one minute left,
there was use up every moment, guys.
There was one non-aviation pilot or prisoner at the camp, and it's actually a sailor that had fallen off a boat and was actually rescued by the Vietnamese, but then became a prisoner afterwards. Right. So They were basically all Air Force men, except for the one that fell off the
Now you guys are just chatting.
I would like to, and I am, but along those same lines, I didn't go to the conference, but I do would like to say, you know, one of these days it's going to be a slow Sunday in the Press Journal, and they're going to put your travel budgets about what you spent. But I appreciate you going over there, bringing this stuff back, because quite frankly, it's one of the most efficient uses of our time and money.
And we're adjourned.
You made it.
Congratulations, Bob. 411.
Yeah.